We stood at the edge of the overgrown path, the towering, dilapidated asylum looming before us like a haunted relic from a bygone era. Its crumbling walls were a testament to the countless stories of suffering and despair that had unfolded within. This was the abandoned asylum that we, a group of urban explorers, had decided to investigate. Known for its dark history of cruel experiments and mysterious disappearances, it had a reputation that both intrigued and terrified us. I glanced at my friends, Alex, the thrill-seeker with a penchant for danger, Maria, the skeptical but curious historian, and Jason, the tech-savvy guy armed with cameras and gadgets. The excitement in their eyes mirrored my own, though a sense of foreboding lingered in the air. "Ready to go in?" Alex asked, his voice barely masking his eagerness. "Let's do it," I replied, steeling myself for what lay ahead. The iron gate creaked open with an eerie groan, setting the tone for our adventure. We stepped inside, our flashlights cutting through the oppressive darkness. The hallways were lined with rusted gurneys, shattered glass, and remnants of medical equipment. Faded, peeling wallpaper hinted at a time when the asylum might have been a place of hope, now replaced by decay and desolation. As we ventured deeper, Maria shared stories she had uncovered during her research. This place was shut down in the 70s after numerous reports of inhumane experiments on the patients. Electroshock therapy, lobotomies, you name it. People went missing too, just vanished without a trace. "Sounds like a horror movie," Jason muttered, adjusting his camera. "It gets worse," Maria continued. "Some say the spirits of the patients never left. They haunt this place seeking revenge." We pressed on, undeterred by the chilling tales. Our footsteps echoed through the empty corridors, a constant reminder of the silence that surrounded us. We reached the central courtyard, where a large, gnarled tree stood, its branches stretching out like skeletal fingers. A cold breeze whispered through the air, carrying with it the faintest hint of whispers. "Did you hear that?" Alex whispered, his bravado wavering. We paused, straining to catch any sound. The whispers grew louder, more distinct yet incomprehensible. They seemed to be coming from all around us, filling the courtyard with an otherworldly presence. Suddenly the temperature dropped and a dense fog rolled in, obscuring our vision. Panic set in as we realized we were no longer alone. Shadows flickered at the edge of our flashlights, taking on human-like forms. The restless spirits of former patients had awakened, drawn to our presence. "We need to get out of here," I said, my voice trembling. "Now." But the asylum had other plans. The doors we had entered through were no longer visible, swallowed by the fog. The walls seemed to shift and change, creating a labyrinthine maze. The spirits circled us, their ethereal forms filled with anger and sorrow. "Stay close," Jason said, trying to keep us together. "If we stick together, we can find a way out." We moved as a group, but the asylum seemed to have a mind of its own. Hallways that should have led back to the entrance twisted and turned, leading us deeper into the heart of the building. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and I could feel the icy touch of unseen hands brushing against my skin. We stumbled upon what looked like an old operating room, the rusted surgical tools still laid out as if waiting for the next patient. The air was thick with a sense of dread, and the shadows seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Maria pointed to a corner where a faded journal lay. She picked it up, her hands trembling as she read aloud. "These are notes from one of the doctors," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They talk about using the patients for experiments, trying to find a cure for madness. They didn't care about the patients' well-being. They were treated like lab rats." The journal described horrific procedures, patients screaming in agony, and those who simply disappeared, their fates unknown. As Maria read, the temperature in the room plummeted, and a low moan echoed through the walls. "Look!" Alex pointed to the doorway. The shadows were coalescing into human forms, their faces twisted in torment. They reached out towards us, their mouths moving silently as if begging for help. "Run!" I shouted, and we bolted from the room, the spirits in close pursuit. We raced down the hallways, our breaths coming in ragged gasps. The fog thickened, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. I could hear the others calling out, trying to stay together, but the asylum seemed determined to separate us. I stumbled into a large, dimly lit room filled with rows of beds. The remnants of restraints hung from the bedposts, and the walls were covered in frantic scribbles and drawings. The air was thick with despair, and I could hear the faint sobs of the patients who had once been confined here. "Guys!" I called out, but there was no response. I was alone. A figure materialized at the far end of the room, a woman in a tattered hospital gown. Her eyes were hollow, her face a mask of sorrow. She pointed to a door at the side of the room, and then she was gone. With no other options, I headed for the door. It led to a narrow staircase, descending into darkness. I hesitated, but the sounds of the spirits growing closer spurred me on. I descended into the basement, the walls closing in around me. The basement was a maze of narrow passages and forgotten rooms, but I kept moving, driven by the hope of escape. The air grew colder, and the whispers more insistent, but I pressed on. Finally, I found it. A hidden exit, just as the journal had described. A narrow tunnel led to freedom. I squeezed through, the spirit's anguished cries fading behind me. Emerging into the cool night air, I collapsed, gasping for breath. I was free, but my friends were not as fortunate. The asylum had claimed them, and their fate remained a haunting mystery. As I looked back at the looming structure, I vowed never to return. The abandoned asylum, with its dark history and restless spirits, would remain a place of nightmares, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lay hidden within its walls.